In school, there was a group of us who were quite into film and TV, so I direct as well, VT coordinate, I've produced jobs, I'm an editor, multiple strings to a bow, but really what they want in this industry is people who are very good at one thing. The ambition that I've spoken about is still there, but it's directed in a very different way.
So I'm here today at Twickenham. Now behind me, just over my shoulder, you can see the main Twickenham stadium. That's home to England Rugby Union, where they play most of their home matches. Here, this is actually known as Twickenham Stoop. So this is home to Harlequins in the Premiership. But today, it's actually host to England A versus Australia A. 2 o'clock kickoff. I'm here early though to have a little bit of time hopefully with Doug, who is a cameraman. He's part of the broadcast team here. If I spin round just behind me over my shoulder, that's where the live production team is set up, and hopefully find out a little bit about what it's like to be part of a live broadcast and the magic behind the scenes. Doug Andrews is a freelance cameraman with experience of many live broadcasts and sporting events. As the senior camera operator at this premier sports match, I was keen to see what happens behind the scenes and to find out about his career journey. Whilst he set up his rig and undertook the usual pre-event preparations, I had time to explore the ground and absorb some of what goes into a live sporting event. So behind me, this is where all the cameras are set up, all the TV monitors are. This is where really the hub is, the magic of the broadcast is put together. We're at the top of one of the stands. You can probably make out the pitch just over my shoulder. This is really where the broadcast is going to happen behind me. At the far end of this corridor, it's really quite packed full of technology really, which is why I'm stood at this end here. So again, with several hours to go, it's just amazing how much preparation is going in. There's a lot of monitors. I'll try and capture some of it as I go past, but yeah, it's quite interesting to see just how much is going on. So Doug, great to just steal you away a little bit. I know you don't like the phrase the calm before the storm, but that's pretty much the way it is right now. We're sort of in between. There's a lot that goes into something like today.
Yeah, it's you sit at home and watch telly and you see a rugby match come on your screen, and there's little things like little phrases like, "Oh, don't watch the Prez, just tune in for the match." And it might seem not that interesting to you at home, but like, there's been weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of planning going into that. And, for a job like this, we started 2 months ago putting this together. And
well, there's a 17-page printout that I've got about half of that with all the timings. I think it's about a 12-hour day.
Yeah, I was here at 8 o'clock this morning. The engineers were here setting up inside they were here on Friday as well, as was I. We do a test day for all the equipment, then we have another day or another morning to set all the stuff up, and it gets boiled down to the point where to the second on the day what's going to happen. The director will have a running order that's literally to the second, and that all gets distilled down from a blank sheet of paper 2 months out, where it's like, right, we've got this game, how are we going to do it?
So to give people a bit of an idea, I arrived here at about 9:30 this morning. You'd already got here and you'd set up. I think you've had a sort of technical check already. The kickoff today is, it's still over 2 hours away, isn't it? 2 o'clock. What's kind of what's the plan then for the rest of the day? I mean, how does that look for you?
Well, for me, I mean, I'm just a camera operator today. I'm involved in the planning and the build-up of the game, but my role today is as a camera operator. So for me, I've got something to do at 12:30, which is Martin Bayfield's opening link. We'll pre-record that. We do for those that don't know, they're called pre-records. They go into a replay machine, and then we build the top of the show. So
right.
if you because there isn't the time at the top of the show, because you go straight in to presentation and the guests talk amongst themselves, and you have team arrivals happening, and you have coach interviews and player interviews and warm-ups and all that going on, that we'll all be collating and building the top of the show, so that when we come on, it's seamless. Titles, intro video, opening link, a few warm-up shots, team arrival shots, then into the studio, guests will all have a chat. That's all done well in advance of kickoff. I've been out and flown a drone around and got some shots of the ground earlier on. That all gets thrown in. Once it gets sort of hour and a half, 2 hours out, it really kicks into another level.
Yeah, it ramps up. Doug had always had a couple of ideas in mind for a career. His main passion at school was photography and film, and he aspired to become a director. His fallback plan was that if all else failed, he would join the Air Force.
So I'd say in school there was a group of us who were quite into film and TV, and we so what happened, basically a guy that's still a good friend of mine went to sixth form college after school to do media and communications, and he spoke really highly of the course. So I was like, well, I'll do that. I was into photography more at the time, but I went and did that, and it was always the plan that okay, well, I want to get into film,
right?
Go and shoot films and be Steven Spielberg or whatever.
Director.
Yeah. And then you kind of find a way, but in the background of that, my sort of fail-safe was the Royal Air Force, and I was like, if that doesn't work, then I'll join the Air Force. So I also had an uncle who did wedding videos,
right?
And he had very early home editing software, and so
this is going back to...
This is going back to me being like 12, 13.
Right, okay.
And I used to go and help him on wedding shoots with a second camera. And quite a lot of what he would say to me is really relevant today. Like,
so we're talking 90s here? Would that
early
be
90s,
okay, so the technology available back then, I mean, I remember those camcorder things.
Yeah, big. I mean, they haven't really got much smaller, but like if you look at the RF camera we got here today, it was pretty similar, but it was obviously VHS tapes and all that kind of stuff, reel-to-reel editing. A lot of the sort of advice he gave me as a wedding photographer or wedding video guy in the 90s is really relevant today. Like, it's stuff like you don't put the camera down, you never know what you'll miss if you put the camera down, all that kind of stuff. Everything needs to be usable, so if you've got a camera and you're holding it, there should be no wasted film. It should all be usable. All that kind of stuff was there. Went to college, finished college, dropped out of university twice. So I went up to Teesside University, who were at the time sponsored by Sony. So they had this really amazing media TV department. But look, at 16, 17, I just wasn't ready.
Right. Hello, I'm sorry for the brief interruption, and I promise to keep it brief. Firstly, thank you so much for watching this video. If you're not already aware, this channel is purely a voluntary project. I set it up alone, and the goal is to help and inspire young people with creative ideas and advice that will hopefully see them successful in forging a career in life. However, it can't succeed by itself and without support. So if you haven't already subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you could do so. It's entirely free. And as well as meaning that you get notifications of any new videos arriving, it just also really helps the channel to grow. So all you need to do is check below this video or any others, and there'll be a subscribe button if you haven't already done so, if you're not already a follower. Now, if you enjoy this video and any others, please give it a thumbs up, and do leave a comment if you'd like to do so. But most importantly of all, if you know anybody who would be interested in this channel and the content that I provide, might be young people, college students, those looking for interesting career choices or inspiration or advice, please do share the channel. Dan's Creative Creatures. As I say, the main purpose, the main goal of the project is to help young people. Thank you. Back to the episode.
Then applied for jobs in TV. At the time it was like writing letters to production companies and stuff. Never got anywhere. It was like, right, I guess TV's done for me now, so joined the Airforce. And was in the Airforce for 5 years. Didn't particularly enjoy it. Loved the sport element of it, and would definitely recommend it to anyone that doesn't know what they're doing with their life. But subsequently in that job, I was still toying around with cameras and stuff, and I remember going to Kuwait, and in our barrack block at night I had a little camcorder and I bought a laptop. And in those days in the Middle East, each little region of the town would sell its own little stuff, and there was an area of town where you could go and buy like knocked off software.
Right.
So I went and bought Adobe Premiere, which is an editing software, brought it back, put it into the laptop, and me and the lads in the block would film adverts and stuff.
Right.
I remember one of them was like an advert for the Air Force.
Right.
At the time, the Army's tagline was "Be the best."
Right.
And the joke in the Air Force was like, "Join the Army, be depressed." So we made this advert of us like mopping barrack blocks and like sweeping stones from the desert and all that kind of stuff. Gradually got back in. I'd make music videos and stuff like that, and realised, right, yeah, actually I do want to do this properly. So
by 2005, Doug was ready for a change and left the Air Force with a renewed determination to make it in the world of TV and film.
And in that time, a website called Mandy came along, which was for media creatives and whatnot, and they post a lot of jobs for runners and that kind of thing, and took about 3 months of applying for every single runner's job that there was, got an interview, and I was away. And once you get a foot in the door, it's about sort of taking as much out of it as you can.
Yeah.
So my first job was as a runner on a student film for National Film and Television School for a guy called Jan de Mon, who went on to direct stuff like 1971, Top Boy.
Right, yeah.
He's a really successful director now. At the time, it was really hard to get into telly if you didn't know someone, telly or film or whatever. Didn't know someone or have a foot in it, and it still is, to be fair. It still is quite difficult. Can't dress that up, because it is. There's no formal training for this. You can go to university and do stuff, but there's no formal entry method. University will teach you stuff, but it won't give you the practical experience. And to be honest, a lot of the guys that are out on sites are going to look at someone out of university, and you might have spent 3 years and think you're the bee's knees, but you come on the site and you'll find out pretty quick.
So you talked about that period, obviously, it sounds like you were just relentless in terms of applying and putting yourself out there. And I mean, thinking about young people now who might be interested in this sort of industry, I mean, what advice would you give them? I mean, is resilience one, persistence?
You've got to be able to, I'd say with any creative job, be it graphic design or TV or acting, you've got to be okay with being told no and being told, sometimes not even being told, just not hearing, because people are quite busy in this industry, and it can be just too much if you get quite a lot of people. I know as someone who looks after camera crews and puts these jobs together, that you do get quite a lot of people just cold calling you, and it is quite tough. You get a message in the middle of the day and you're like, oh, I'll reply to that later, and you don't. So you've got to be prepared to get rejected. I get rejected often and a lot. And even when you're in, and I've been doing it now 20 years almost, and as a freelancer now, this is the quiet. It's almost like TV's in a recession at the moment.
Right.
Money's not being spent. Everything's being tightened, and the work isn't there. So when I first started, I worked for a company who were big. Essentially started as a runner, met someone on that job who knew a guy who sat over there, who was my first boss in telly, proper boss. Phoned him up. They needed someone that weekend. Got a job. That company was an independent company started by two blokes who wanted to do telly slightly differently. They ended up shooting like Red Dwarf and Rugby League. They were the original company. But what's happened now is like large conglomerates, as with most of the world, have swallowed up all of those independent companies, and they're now beholden to shareholders, and the shareholders want their profits at all costs, and the only way you can do that is by tightening the belts.
Yeah.
You know, the TV in the 80s and 90s was the Wild West. Money was just being thrown all over the place. Even when I first started, it was a very different industry to the one it is now. But to the point I'm making is like, you're never comfortable as a freelancer.
Right. There is clearly a harsh element to the broadcasting world where work is not guaranteed in the same way that many other jobs are. The ability to deal with this is crucial to anyone looking to make it in the industry.
I think the Air Force probably gives you a good military service, definitely gives you a sort of pragmatic outlook on life.
Right.
You kind of, you know, things can change in a second in that industry, and so you kind of have to roll with it. And I guess rolling with stuff is the best way of doing it.
Right.
You've got to be able to do it, and there are people that can't, and there are people that really struggle and have anxiety about, oh, where's my next day's work coming from? And to your point about how do you get into it, that manifests itself, and you get people who are really pushy, and they the way they seem to think about finding work is, the more I phone people up, the more I'm in their face, the more I'll get work. And there's a very delicate balancing act when you're first trying to get into it, between appearing confident and outgoing and willing to put yourself out there, and just being a pain in the arse. You kind of got to balance that, and it's really difficult. And the best way of doing it is, when you get a chance, just be as helpful and as friendly as you can. And when the job's finished, go home, maybe send an email on Monday and say, really enjoyed it, if you need me again, here I am. And then move on.
Yeah.
What's the next one? Where am I going next? Because that guy that you've worked with already knows that you're there and you're decent, if you're decent. Doesn't need constant bombardment.
So what's your setup now? You're freelance then?
Yep.
Okay, so what does that look like in terms of your setup? It's just you by yourself?
Yep.
Okay.
So there's two ways people do it. You're a limited company or a sole trader. It's,
right.
You know, limited company, you're the company. You start out, you've got nothing in the diary. People phone you up, they book you for individual days or a long period of work. You go and do it, you go home. Typically, I'd say 2-3 days a week.
Right.
So it's, you know, in terms of demands on your time, it's not that bad. But the new person coming in, there are facilities companies. If you want to be involved in outside broadcast, which I'm in, film's slightly different. You might work for they call them gear houses, where all the cameras and stuff are rented from. And you go and learn all the equipment there. But the facilities companies, they're the people who own all these cameras, and they provide staff to go out and look after it.
Right.
And you get your training there. And then when you've trained long enough, you move into the freelance market and you become a freelance camera operator or a sound guy or whatever. But in terms of what it looks like for me, typically your typical working week is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
That's when sport is. You might get the odd weekday game. If you work in football, it's a 7-day-a-week gig, but the travelling's unreal. Like, I tend to do 20,000 miles a year just
right.
on work, and then there's other miles on top of that. So there's a lot of time in the car.
And that's not just UK based, because you were mentioning you've got a couple of things going on. One of which is a rugby channel. I think that's right.
Yeah, there's a rugby YouTube channel, French rugby. But one thing this job can do is, if you get to the point in your career where you're respected enough and you're good enough, you can go all over the world. It's like, I look back at what I've done since I left the Air Force, and you know.
Well, as you're talking, we've got a World Cup winner just walking behind you, and
yep.
So your rugby channels with Joe Worsley.
It is, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won't plug it too hard, but yeah, it's with Joe Worsley and another guy I work with. But yeah, so that's like a thing I do outside of this. Just a little bit of diversification to sort of, because I have so much spare time.
Yeah.
I've got time to devote to that.
As Doug had described, there was a noticeable change of gears after we had finished our chat, where the broadcast crew went back to their stations, the presenters began speaking, and the fans started to arrive at the stadium. It was at this point that all the work behind the scenes that I'd watched really began to take shape. The game has literally just kicked off. All the preparation has happened now, and really it's the 80 minutes of the game. This is really Doug's time up in the gantry, capturing everything. So good luck, England. As soon as the half-time whistle went, Loris Devalio came shooting down from that gantry. The two other chaps were right down on the pitch. They're actually down over in that direction at the moment. They've gone back live on TV. Whilst there was a huge amount of preparation, for those actually in front of the camera, it's a very, very fast-paced environment in which to work. During our conversation, I had asked Doug how his role had changed over the years and what his thoughts were on the future for the broadcasting industry.
Because everything is so transient. Like TNT might decide that they don't want to cover rugby anymore tomorrow, and if they do that, then that's most of your work gone. Like, who's going to get it next? And if they get it, who's going to be booking the cruise? Who's going to be doing X, Y, Z? You know. So for me, a lot of what I'm doing at the moment is to sort of future-proof myself. That's why, you know, the French rugby channel, we'd hope will, if I could do that for a full-time job, that's definitely what I'd do. And also I've kind of got to the point with it now where I'm like, I want to do more stuff that interests me and make my own products and do interesting things, rather than, the biggest fear for me is just being a jobbing cameraman, just being a guy, you know.
That was going to be my question. I mean, you describe yourself as a cameraman. It seems to me you're much more than that. I mean, when you think about all the facets of the job and your experience.
Yeah, so I do a lot of other bits. So I direct as well, VT coordinate, I've produced jobs, I'm an editor, multiple strings to a bow, but really what they want in this industry is people who are very good at one thing. I'd say that there are, you know, the ambition that I've spoken about is still there, but it's directed in a very different way. Right. It's there to sort of, I now want to not prove to myself, but I want to be able to do stuff for myself rather than relying on other people.
Right.
And that's where I'm sort of channeling that competitiveness now. It's like, I've done that bit. I want to, you know, the challenge now is, right, I'm going to do this on my own, and I'm going to get that French rugby channel to the point where that's my job.
Right.
And then probably once I've done that, I'll be like, I'm bored of this. I need another thing now.
Yeah.
You know.
Although Doug is a self-confessed rugby fan, he's covered a multitude of sports over the years, and the attention to detail that he's developed has given him a clear competitive edge over many of his peers.
I've worked on pretty much everything from, you know, America's Cup, yachting, horse racing.
Right.
I'm camera supervisor on British Superbikes, which is like my first love, I guess.
Right.
Like, me and my dad have been going to the Superbikes since I was 5, probably younger. Probably, yeah, almost certainly since I was a fetus, probably. Yeah, so everything, you know.
Do the challenges differ with all the different sports, or is it essentially it very, very similar?
Yeah, I guess they do. There's two ways of looking at camera work, right? You can be like a guy that knows how to technically operate a camera and will give the director what they want and X, Y, Z. Basically do it by numbers. Or the really, really good ones are the ones that go the extra bit, and you'd be amazed how many people don't. But like, I'd say without like hubris and those guys will back me up on it, I could probably name every player in the Premiership by what boots they wear.
Right.
Because that gives you a competitive advantage over other cameramen.
Yeah.
Because they don't know. So you're the first person at the close-up.
Right.
People notice that.
Yeah.
So it's like, give yourself every advantage to be like the players on the pitch. They've prepped all week for that game. Why shouldn't I?
Yeah.
Like, I've been booked. Somebody's giving me money to put the best product down the lens of that barrel. Down the barrel of that lens, sorry. Why shouldn't, like, it's almost disrespectful not to give that level of commitment back.
Yeah.
So
is that easier to do when you've got a sport like rugby, and obviously you're a rugby fan, so your knowledge of that game is probably more so perhaps than other sports?
It's easier, but it's not impossible.
Right.
Like, you typically know with a team sport 4 or 5 days in advance what the team's going to be. You just look it up. Look at the old games. Like, what boots is he wearing? Does he wear tape? Is there anything you can, especially in rugby, if there's 8 guys at the bottom of a scrum and you know who's given the penalty away, but you know that they've got their fingers taped up, and in amongst a melee of bodies, you can pick out that person.
As the stadium continued its sound checks, I battled over the background music to ask Doug what advice he would consider giving to young people who are unsure about their career options.
I'm a big advocate of the military.
Right.
I don't necessarily think it's right for everyone, but if you're in a position in life where you haven't got a clue what you want to do, I think there are a lot worse ways of finding out.
Right.
You can go there. They do, like, it's a cliche, they give you a trade, but they also give you, I don't know if it's the same now, it certainly was when I was in, but it turned me from, like, I was a boy when I went in.
Right. And how old were you when you went in?
I was 19, but I was a child.
Okay.
Like, I was a really immature kid.
Right.
And it turned me into a immature adult, but one with focus, and I knew where I wanted to be, and so part of that is my personality, but I definitely think what you got to lose. You don't have to go and join the Royal Marines or an infantry regiment.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know it at the time because they weren't recruiting that trade, but there's a whole branch of the military for photographers. So if you want to be in the media and you can't get a job, you want to be in telly or photography or journalism, join the military as a photographer and go and learn how to do stuff there, because they're all using social media and they're all using technology now. Like, it's a platform. It doesn't have to be you're giving your life over to the military.
Yeah.
I went with completely selfish interests. It was like, I'm going to go here, find out what I want to do, and as soon as I know, I'm pulling the cord and I'm gone. You're not trapped. You can go to basic training and walk out. You can walk out the front door. They won't stop you.
Yeah.
But I credit it with getting me my job. I think my boss, I still call him my boss. He said I probably wouldn't have got in the door without it, because it was a point of difference.
Yeah.
But it also gave me this kind of respect for the pyramid.
Yeah.
Like, there are real marked similarities between the military and television.
Yeah.
Now, you have your exec producer who's your station commander, and you have your runner who's your infantry soldier, and everyone has their level. And I would say that I don't think many people will agree with me, but I think if you haven't got a clue, what have you got to lose?
Yeah.
Because you might find that you love it in the military and it's what you always wanted to do, or you get there you learn how to do something, you have a bit of fun, you meet some lifelong friends. I've got mates that I'm still see to this day from the military. So I'd definitely say that is a way to focus what you want to do.
Well, talking of work, I better let you get back to it,
Yeah,
because you've got some to do now. The sun's out.
Should be a good one as well. England got a good side out, so it'll be fun.
Yeah.
And you got best seat in the house.
Exactly. Well, absolutely fantastic to spend the day here at the Stoop in Twickenham, to see a little bit of rugby, but more importantly to meet with Doug and just get a sense for what goes on behind the scenes. Brilliant to hear his story, his journey into what he's doing here, and also get to see really what goes into it. I've been to many sporting events over the years and seen live rugby. But never really had chance to go behind the scenes and see what goes into it, and a huge amount does go into it. It's a 12-hour day, but that being said, in many ways it feels almost effortless because everybody knows what they're doing. There's a huge amount of teamwork here. And collaboration. It's very, very technical, it's very meticulously planned, but at the same time, it allows for people's talents to thrive. When you think about sport, music, entertainment, it feels very, very privileged, like only a few people get to make it onto the pitch, onto the stage. And that may well be true, but at the same time, there's a huge opportunity here behind the screen, behind the camera, for the right sort of person with the right passion, and somebody who really, really wants to get into this line of work. It's a fantastic opportunity, and it's great to see.